Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Espen Kraft, of course, and today we're going to take a look at the Akai S700 again. I've done videos about the S700 before, but today we're going to take a look at one special feature, and that is called the audio trigger. That can be used to breathe some life into a live drum performance, or it can be used as a drum machine sound replacement, just as we did back in the old days. So let's have a look. And here I have a sample. S1, sample 1. And by pressing the button named audio trigger, I can now browse through a couple of options in regards to triggering that sample through the line-in jack. Or I could use the mic-in jack as well if I wanted to. And so I'll set the trigger to on. I'll set it to trigger back note C3, which is the root note of that sample. And I'll set the desired trigger level. So for the first example here, I'm going to use a very cheap drum pad, which I'm going to hit with the stick. And the output of this is going into the line-in of the S700 and thus triggering that sample when I hit the pad. So let's record this snare using this method. I'm going to use the Akai S700 to record some other drums as well. And to give the drum sound a 80s gated feel, let's use the AMS RMX 16 with a non-lin 2 reverb as well. So let's record the snare in real time. In a live situation, this could have a great visual impact as well. Another way of using the audio trigger in on a sampler or a delay machine was to replace a sound. So let's say we want to replace this snare drum from this pattern in this drum machine. That's the sound we want to replace. So what we will do now is to find the right separate output of this drum machine where the snare is going out and route that into the audio trigger in of the S700 in this case, thus triggering another sample that will replace the snare drum we just heard. And this was the way of doing this in the 80s if the sounds had already been committed to tape. Let's say you had the snare drum on a track on the tape machine, only to find out later in the production that the snare didn't cut it. Then you took that track's output of the tape machine and run it through a sampler or the AMS delay, and thus replacing that snare drum with another sound onto another track in real time. And that's what's happening here. I'm replacing the snare drum with a sample in the sampler. So now that original snare is triggering the new snare on the S700 instead. And so those were two ways you could or can use the audio trigger in on a sampler. And the last example was a very practical and authentic 80s way of replacing drums. The first one was a bit of fun. So thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Cheers.